Hello and welcome back to Kvikmyndapod, an Icelandic cinema podcast. I'm Rob Watts, and on this podcast, me and my good friend Ellie Cawthorne chat about Icelandic film. Thanks for joining us again on our journey, where this week it's Christmas. And Christmas is a bloody great time to be in Iceland. My first ever trip to Iceland was at Christmas, and it was absolutely magical. It was cold, it was kind of snowy, and it was very, very dark. But when you did have light, it was amazing. It was like golden hour for 4 hours, so I managed to get a lot of good photos. But that feeling of excitement and festivity that permeated everyone and everything was amazing. And this week's film Echo captures that, but shows us so much more and gives us an intimate insight into what pretty much everyone in the city is doing and feeling in the days leading up to Christmas and the extravaganza that is New Year's in Reykjavik. So let's check it out. Hello, Ellie.
Hello, how's it going?
Not so bad, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. I've been out in the sun all day, so it's time to retreat back to the inside and talk about things on screens instead.
Yeah, very cold things, very different to being outside.
Very cold things. Well, you really picked a great time of year as well for this film. The classic Christmas movie in
the middle of the year. Yeah, but I think, we've seen a lot of Christmas already in pretty much, I think in every film we've watched. It's like Iceland and Christmas are just as one. So yeah, this was Echo from 2019, directed by Rúnarsson. To give it its Icelandic title, I think it's pronounced Bergmál.
That was very atmospheric, the way you did that.
Yeah, we'll see if that's right. I don't know. So yeah, it's like, I'll give it a little synopsis. It's not the kind of film that really needs one, but anyway, because it's not a total work of fiction. And it's not a narrative-based film. What it is a mosaic or jigsaw of 56 single-take static shots of contemporary Iceland over the Christmas and New Year's period. This film shows the full spectrum of society and runs the gamut of human emotions.
It's a bit like the kind of Icelandic version of Paris Je t'aime or something.
Yeah.
But a lot more pared back, I think, and sparsely done, and short, sharp bursts into little different lives, isn't it? Rather than fully developed stories.
Yeah, exactly. Story is the key there. I think there's maybe 2 or 3 where you actually have a kind of narrative arc, almost, and the rest are real snapshots of Icelandic society, from, the poorest to the richest to the, those who don't have anything to those who have everything, and family and friends and all of that.
Yeah, it definitely is the full spectrum, isn't it, of life. And I thought that that's one of the most impressive things about it, that we have all these contrasts. We have, old ways of doing things and modern technology side by side. We have older generations, younger generations, like you say. We have people who are clearly very privileged. We have people who have nothing. Everything really is there, isn't it? Which I thought was really nicely observed, actually.
Very, very. And I think Christmas is such a time of high emotion, but also, for everyone around the world, it's a time of coming together. And in a country so small, it's really nice to see just everyone displayed on screen within the same, 75 minutes, I think it is.
Yeah, maybe it's worth talking a bit about that Christmas setting before we go much further, because I think it does 2 things, which is, one is the thing that you said, which is Christmas is a heightened time. So like you say, you have more family interactions than you would any other time. You have celebrations, you have tragedies, but also it provides quite a nice structure, doesn't it, for the whole thing, because you kind of build up towards Christmas and then you kind of go on through to New Year, which is like a peak, I'd say, of the film, and then it kind of tails back to the kind of tranquil January blues time.
Yeah.
Which I think is quite a nice structure.
Absolutely. And we're moving chronologically, but that's about the only thing kind of connecting any of the stories, isn't it? Because we don't see the same people, we're not in the same locations for any of those kind of little snapshots.
But I definitely thought there was something about a kind of change of pace throughout. So at the start, you had like very sparse landscapes with no words, and I thought, oh my god, is this whole thing gonna be silent? And was like
some art installation.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. It was like, these 75 minutes are stretching out ahead of me. But obviously, as we kind of move through, you get more and more interaction, and I think there is kind of like a quickening of pace and drama, perhaps. I know what you mean, that scene to scene that changes and there's contrast and stuff, and then towards the end it's like we kind of crest a wave and then we like slowly float back down at the end.
It is exactly that, and there is the imagery to even reflect that, isn't there?
Oh yeah, maybe that's why I said it. It's in my mind, because it ends, of course, with a big wave going back and forth.
But you're right, I think even that first opening shot, so we only have the soundtrack, the music comes in at the beginning and comes in and out at the end. But that first shot is just so mundane. The whole thing is kind of mundane.
Yeah.
That first shot of the car going through the car wash, it's kind of just like, right,
yeah.
What is this? Why? And it's so slow and so serene. And then things obviously pick up towards Christmas.
Do you know what the first like 2 or 3 shots made me think of? This is such a inane reference, but I'm going to make it anyway. You know those bits on BBC between the programmes when they change channels?
Oh,
and they have
kind of interstitial title things.
And they have the logos, and they have like, I don't know, some swimming club doing a little performance, or some mountain rangers.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I thought of there.
You know what? That's a completely fair observation, isn't it? Like, and you're right, because we have those Clevedon swimmers, but then in this film we even have, you know, the old folks doing their aqua aerobics.
We do.
And the mountain workers.
I think your point about the banality, though, is kind of key to the whole thing, isn't it? Because we start off with the most mundane, banal thing, but the whole point is that it's really beautiful. There's beauty in the banality. And that's throughout, I think, these like tiny human interactions and daily lives. There's only a couple of scenes where there's anything resembling drama. I think it's quite celebratory of those kind of tiny everyday moments, isn't it?
Yes, I do. I was thinking about which of all the stories, which were my favourites, and a couple of the tinier moments did slip my mind, if I'm honest. Sort of outshadowed by the bigger ones. But you're right, like every single moment is so well judged and well observed. And even like there is one which has now come to mind. There's a mother and her, I think it's her son, just sat in the window looking at the birds in front of the Christmas tree, and there's really nothing happening. They're just sharing a moment, and I think her mum comes in and starts moaning about next door neighbour's car or something. But just the relationship dynamic just there between the three characters in that sort of 2-minute scene, it's really lovely and beautiful, like you said.
Yeah.
And all the shots, like, because they don't move, they are one take and one position. They're just so amazingly composed.
Yeah, they're almost like a painting, aren't they? Each one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they all have like little visual cues in them, don't they? So I was thinking of, when we get a scene of just some kind of drunk guys playing Monopoly, which obviously always cause arguments, but there were so many things just in the backdrop that like tell you about their lives, and like somebody's feet just poking into the edge of the frame, like all these tiny little kind of visual clues to somebody's life and also what's happening. And I thought that was cleverly done throughout. Did you ever find the single shot thing a bit frustrating? Sometimes I wanted to get closer to the action, when we were seeing interactions between people, but I really wanted to like zoom in on their faces.
Sure. I have to say I didn't, except there's the one where the girl is being told off for hitting the bully. And the classic, whoever the adult isn't really understanding the situation at all. And I was like, I don't know if this is the teacher or who is talking, because they're off camera. And I wanted to see who it was. But the framing works so well, because she runs away, turns around, and that person comes into frame. I just thought, yep, that's fine. That's all I needed. Didn't need to move. The characters just moved.
Yeah, that was really classy, the way that people moved in and out of shots. And that changed the whole kind of story of some, didn't it?
Yeah, and the focus just pulls from one little meeting to another, like there's like one of the families getting ready for their Christmas or New Year meal, and the young couple have a little kiss. Yeah. And then it cuts to the sort of switches focus to the living room or the dining table, and the parents and the younger children are
I think it's
hugging.
just, the whole thing was so understated that then sometimes I just want to be in closer. So I'm thinking of, the scene, you have a scene where there's the guy who's a drug addict and he's going to the health workers, social workers, whoever they may be.
Yeah, one of the most powerful scenes,
for sure. And they, for, his needle box and stuff, and they give him a Christmas present. The whole thing was so subtly played that I just really wanted to get in on his face, and get more intimate. But I totally get why it chose to have those kind of single shot images, because that definitely worked, and it was incredibly coherent, and it gave the whole thing like a really hypnotic feel. So I understand why. That was just my one quibble, if I were to have a quibble.
Sure. I wonder, that probably would have made things a lot more complicated, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. Sort of, I don't think they had that much time to film it and stuff. And it's obviously a stylistic decision anyway. But I think you get all you need from that. You've got all those... I mean, that scene... We've talked about, drug addicts in Reykjavik in, the last couple of films. But to see a sort of really naturalistic depiction... Like, I mean, I'm not sure what... Because this film is three different styles of story. There's the scripted... I think... Well, I can't remember what the director says, but he said, I think it's scripted, initiated...
Which I'm guessing is kind of like an improv vibe.
Yeah, so they'll be told the scene, and that's where they go from there. Yeah, and then obviously just the real.
And the real ones presumably are like the big carol singing scenes and the group scenes.
I would think so. Yeah, the carols, the bonfire, a lot of the New Year fireworks stuff, and even the birth scene. Obviously, I can't quite recreate that.
Yeah.
But that scene with the drug addict and the workers helping him was just. I mean, firstly, they're giving him all the things he needs to continue to fuel his addiction, because that's kind of the only way to stop them, I guess, reusing needles and all this kind of thing. Keep it as safe as possible. But then their support for him over the Christmas period, just saying that they're there 24 hours a day, we can call you if you'd like. And he's just so grateful to have someone to talk to. And then that present giving, oh my God. I was just like, it's so lovely.
Ertu í ykkur samskiptum við aðstandendur?
Já, alveg, þú veist. Þau eru bara ekkert miklu samskiptum við mig.
Nei. Ok. Bara svo við vitir, Jóhann, ef það hjálpar eitthvað, að þá sko vakt í Frú Ragnheiði, við erum hérna alla hátíðina. 24. og 5. og hún komið svo ofta og vilt.
Ok.
Og heyri í okkur.
Ekki þetta.
Já. Ef þú vilt sko, þá gætu við líka hringt í þig.
Já, ég megi það alveg sko.
Bara svona til að taka stöðuna.
Já. Algjörlega. Það er ógeðslega, það er mjög fallega gert af ykkur.
Okkar er sko ánægðan. Og með einhverja van, það eru með jólagjöf handa þér.
Aha.
Já. Það fá sko allir sem kom til okkar í jólagjöf.
Jálfur.
Þannig að sko það er okkar ánægðan, Jóhann, að fá að gefa þér jólagjöf. Þannig að gjörðu svo vel.
Takk.
Hver er ánægðan?
Ég er bara hefa í því.
Sömuleiðis. Sömuleiðis.
Já, bara takk æðislega fyrir þetta.
I think there's a lot of humanity and empathy, isn't there, in the film? And I think any kind of time that we see people who are part of the Icelandic state, they're quite, they come across well. So we have those people, and then we also have the, what we would call, I guess, 999 operators, emergency services.
Yes, 112.
112, exactly. Which I thought that was one of the most powerful scenes to me. So we have a guy answering the phones and saying, obviously speaking to a child who's involved in some kind of horrible domestic incident, but he is the most calming person I have ever heard. I think if I rang the emergency services and he answered, I would be a bit like, have I rung the right number here? You were like too calm.
Sure.
But really reassuring and kind of made you feel good about the human condition on a whole, didn't it?
Absolutely. I can't imagine being in the young child's kind of position, neither can I imagine being on the end of the line, and because they're just sat in that nondescript office at a computer, and he's talking him through what to do and calming him down and just having a conversation. Just the humanity there is beautiful in a quite devastating way.
I think actually throughout there's really not much of the bad side of humanity. I'm trying to think of some. So there's the kind of the dad in the Christmas tree shop who's arguing,
played for laughs more than
yeah,
anything,
exactly, arguing with his daughter, and then in the end it does seem that he gets her the outdoor Christmas tree she wants anyway, so that kind of is kind. And but other than
there's the immigrants at the church is probably the most sort of dramatic politically.
Yeah, who would so the kind of story we're given there is that two immigrants are trying to claim sanctuary at a church and then they're removed by police.
Yes.
So yeah, you're probably right that that's the most combative.
It's not a nice thing to watch in any context. I assume that wasn't a real arrest, but it definitely shows. I mean, you know, immigration is a huge thing the world over, and everyone deals with it. I mean, I'm not a political person particularly, but it seems in very much a similar way. I don't want them to go back home to end up, you know, dead. And you wonder why they can't stay, but you're not given that information. All you see really is them being taken away by the police, who then pop up again later on, obviously in that 112 call. Do they pop up again? But you see kind of both sides to the emergency services there.
Yeah.
And I like that kind of contrast. And it's just very truthful, I suppose. It's like it might be Christmas and people might be having fun, but not everyone is having a great time.
Yeah, the Christmas element definitely adds to that, doesn't it? The sense of some people celebrating being with their family, the joy, and other people, Christmas is a really hard time for people who are homeless or drug addicts, or the old man in the old age home, for example. Those kind of things on Christmas are especially poignant.
You wonder with that one, whether the granddaughter seems to really care for her granddad, and it's really kind of sweet moment, but perhaps only happens once a year.
Yeah.
I don't know. It certainly feels like it's Christmas. Let's go see Granddad. I hope not, but it is still very heartwarming.
It's interesting, isn't it, when you only get, a minute of something, that then you're kind of left to fill in the blanks of what the rest of the story is. So I wonder if it's always this, like, you fill in the blanks the same way. Because for me, I saw that one and I thought maybe he has dementia and he doesn't know what's happening, for example, so he's kind of not responding when his granddaughter or whoever's talking to him. That
was my thinking too.
And then there's other ones as well where you're given a snapshot of the story and you have to kind of fill in the rest. So actually I was thinking, it's a really different one, but there's the two friends, I presume, again we don't even know, in the bar, a guy and a girl, and
again, assumption is they're friends, especially by the end of that scene.
And so he's kind of saying, oh look, so-and-so's over there, doesn't she look really hot? So my assumption there is that they were friends, but she kind of was in love with him, and he wasn't.
But he had his eyes on the
someone
hottie.
Else, exactly. But then again, that's like a whole year's worth of a story that we get in like 60 seconds or something.
It's like masterful storytelling to be able to tell someone, there's this complicated relationship between these two friends who like going to gigs together and stuff, and then just with a couple of lines from him talking about another person and her facial expressions, you sort of know what's been going on and how he doesn't know what she feels.
And sometimes I quite like that those kind of stories and the assumptions that you made were, well, turned on the head. So I'm just thinking of, so there was a guy who was drinking wine in his fancy apartment. We know by this point it's kind of Christmas Day.
He's got the telly on.
And he's got the telly on. He's got a glass of wine, very big glass, and a microwave meal. And you think, oh God, this guy's alone on Christmas. What a sad thing. But then he kind of gets out his phone and takes a picture of his dinner, and you can tell like somebody's texting him, and you think, and so I went from thinking, oh, this guy is either horrible or really sad because he's all alone on Christmas, to thinking, oh, his partner is away or can't be with him, or like
anybody.
It flipped the story totally, which was really clever and nicely done,
very nice. And I mean, my first reaction to that was, that's a very fancy wine rack. Which is true. It's very. If I had a big old house, that would be a kind of cool way to display the wine. But you're right. You don't have any context, and it's such a classic setup of someone having a microwave meal on their own. But I love the fact that you can make up your own mind who is on the other end, but it makes the story seem a lot more positive than it otherwise might have been. Yeah, I just love the storytelling, and again, there's a lot of them do have a little bit of humour in, and one of my favourites is the daughter and the stepdaughter playing piano.
I didn't find that humorous. I found it heartbreaking.
It's humorous and heartbreaking. Like,
maybe just you should explain what happens.
Yeah, so a young girl has come to see her dad. Her parents have obviously split up, and he's with a new woman who has her own daughter, and she's turned up. The daughter's turned up to spend Christmas with her dad, and she's going to treat him to a surprise, which looks like it's probably her playing this beautiful piano piece. And she's sat there practicing while he goes and does whatever he's doing with his new wife. And she's okay. She's not particularly great.
This really brings back so many memories of my, like, incredibly mediocre flute playing. And then I'd go to school, and in orchestra there'd be someone else who will remain unnamed here who would just absolutely boss me, and I just think,
virtuoso.
Oh, why bother?
So that's exactly what happens. And then the stepdaughter comes in. Turns out the dad is a piano teacher, and he's just been teaching her for like for the last 3 years or whatever. And she sits up there and just smashes the shit out of that piece, and just leaving. I think is it Elska, I think, is the daughter, and she's just standing there, arms folded, just very disappointed that she's not that good. and then has to sort of tell her dad that there was no surprise, or she doesn't want to show him that she can play that piece.
Sad.
Oh, because she's not as good as the stepdaughter.
Oh.
And it goes on for such a long time.
Yeah, you're like, please end, please stop playing.
Yeah, considering they're all so short, that one I must be the longest, maybe. It certainly feels like it. And it's, funny.
Það var fínt
Það
hérna.
ekki? Það var nóg pláss. Gott að geta verið með flílinn.
Heyrðu, ég er með pínu surprise fyrir þér.
Fyrir mig?
Já.
Hæ, Salka mín. Hæ, velkomin að segja. Gaman að sjá þig. Hæ, Jöstu mín.
Hæ.
Það er frábært að þú gast komið til okkar yfir jólin. Það verða æði, ég lofa. Heyrðu, ertu til að hjálpa mér aðeins með tréð?
Já. Já, ekki mál. Heyrðu, surprise-ið, bara bíða pínu.
Já.
Ok, ég kem að þér.
Já. Þú Salka? Já. Messi hana? Ég er dóttirinn að Lovísu. Já. Hæ. Gaman að hitta þig. Já, sömuleiðis.
The one I found funny, which again is probably not like, it's not exactly straightforwardly funny, but is where there's some kind of like parking dispute or some guys blocking the road, and then a woman comes out and is like, what's your problem? And she's clearly the aggressor. Then is saying like, you're attacking me. I'm going to broadcast this on Facebook Live. And the guy's like, what?
He's just trying to park his car.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but he's just trying to park his car and she's come up too close behind him.
Yeah.
It is a very funny scene. I love it.
Yeah. Which again was obviously kind of dark humour, but again a nice kind of commentary on. It all felt very contemporary, didn't it? So quite a few of them had kind of tech elements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That makes it sound weird and boring, but raise some of the issues to do with tech. So there's that one I was thinking of, and
the Nan with the VR headset.
Yeah, Nan in a VR headset, which is always a winner.
I mean, classic, very funny as well. And then, but in the next room, like the young couple Skyping his family, I think. Well, that's again
not clear, is it?
Not clear, but that's my assumption, and it's just really nice to see, because we've talked about modern and old Iceland, and you see it all in the same room in that place for like a minute, and it's cool.
I want to come back to that modern and old Iceland point, but the other thing I was just going to say on that tech point is the other one we have as well is the dad who is possibly a farmer or some kind of hydroponics guy.
Outside the greenhouse.
Outside some greenhouses, talking to who is presumably is a bank manager or whatever, saying I couldn't get a loan because the algorithm has screwed me over. Can I talk to a human because the algorithm's not trusting me? Which again is like that kind of slightly distrustful of tech side of things.
It's that modern frustration that we all have now, where you can't ever speak to a human being, and in this case, like his entire life is sort of on the line here. He needs the loan, which has always been given because their income varies over the year. Christmas is a good time, apparently. I'm not sure what he's growing. I'm pretty sure that greenhouse is actually used for tomatoes in real life, but yeah, it's like the negatives of modern technology and how it could like drastically ruin a person's livelihood. just because it doesn't take into account anything that has been agreed on in the past, sort of from person to person.
Yeah. Cycling back to the old versus new thing.
Yes.
There were some heavy Rams echoes.
Sure there were.
in
Yes.
Echo.
Like
See what I
it.
did there? The farmhouse, burning farmhouse being one.
Uh-huh.
So we see this really dramatic shot of the burning farmhouse, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
And we see in the foreground, we have a group of people kind of watching the burning, taking photos of it, which is classic what you would do these days.
Well, of course you would. I'm sure that the granddaughter there is like Instagramming the shit out of it.
Yeah. And then we have a conversation with the guy who has obviously chosen to burn it, who has come back, and it's his grandmother's farm or whatever, and he says, oh, well, it's cheaper to get a Polish manufactured house, or what would you call it? I don't know, like a Polish flat pack house.
Yeah.
And this idea of like the old ways of farming being replaced by just a more international mechanized version of everything.
I'm not even sure if that house... I don't think there'll be any farming going on, will there? I suppose he talks about eggs or something.
I guess it's just a symbol of the farm more
Life.
generally, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, farm life. And when he's kind of saying to that guy, oh, I'll pay you for eggs or whatever, and this old farmhand guy is saying, oh, well, I have a deal, which means I swap eggs for milk with my friend, and he says, well, why would you want milk when you could have cash, which is a very modern capitalistic approach to that situation, isn't it?
Exactly, and that line would feel completely relevant in Rams when 100%. You've got the youngsters, the younger farmers, or the outsiders coming in and basically saying the exact same thing. I thought it was interesting again to sort of comment on the housing as well, because like they obviously Iceland's gone through so many changes in the way houses are built. We already spoke about like turf huts to the corrugated iron, and now they're physically, or this person specifically is physically destroying a house rather than doing it up because it's not cost effective, to be replaced with not just parts, but a fully formed house is coming from another country now. You know, it's the whole film, I suppose, is commenting slightly on it. This is modern Iceland, and this is what's happening, the internationalization of pretty much everything. Same with the immigration stuff, like the Prime Minister's talking about Canadian based Iceland immigrants, and it's just saying like, look, we're not just a country of 330,000 people who are all native now. People and things are gonna keep changing, and they're all gonna keep coming and going from the island and from, you know, mainland Europe or wherever.
And that kind of generational divide as well. The scene we get of a librarian, I presume, on the phone to his mum saying, "No, mum, we don't eat whale meat. I've told you this. You know, I don't want to have our kids eating whale meat." That kind of changing attitudes and rejection of traditional stuff is there again. Yeah,
that argument's so good, because he starts off by saying, well, I don't like it, so I'm not going to eat it. If you want to eat it, that's fine. And then the real sort of the other reason comes out, and he's like, in principle, I'm pretty much against whaling.
This is like the Icelandic version of like, but Mum, I'm a vegan now.
Sure.
But whale meat is the Iceland version.
Yeah. Have you ever tried whale meat?
No, I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know what the status of whaling in Iceland is. Is it legal?
I think it's legal within a certain limit.
I have like the feeling that I don't really want to get involved in that. But have you eaten whale meat?
I think that's probably very fair. And I feel basically the same. I've eaten a mouthful when I was over there. I think when I was there, the rule was, you know, there's an allocated amount of whales they could kill. Yeah. Because it's a traditional thing. And so I tried I was there with a couple of friends I'd made at the hostel, and Dirk decided to buy a whale steak from, I think it's called the Sea Baron or the Lobster Baron down on the harbour side. It's very famous for its lobster bisque, and he bought it, and I was like, I feel like I should try it.
What did it taste like?
It tasted like the sea. It was very much, and I'm not a seafood eater at all, really. I don't even eat tuna, things like that. But it came and it looked very much like a cow steak.
And
it had
also
the texture
known as
of
a beef steak.
Yeah, or just a steak, I suppose. In this country, a steak would normally just be
a cow steak,
a cow steak, a beef steak, a cattle steak. It looked like that, and sort of the consistency was the same, but it tasted like just pure like seawater, like the fishiest fish you could ever eat.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know what this character, the librarian, what particular whale he's talking about. But if it's minke whale, I'm totally with him.
Nei, ég ekki að fara að borða hval. Bara, ég borða ekki hval. Það skiptir ekkert máli þó að þetta sé búið að liggja í mjólk eða eitthvað, þú veist. Mér finnst það ekki gott. Ég svo þetta bara prinsip hjá, og börnin mín borða ekki hval. Það alveg á hreinu, þetta bara prinsip hjá mér.
Talking of whales and fish,
yeah,
there's a sort of classic scene of the old men cooking the absolutely like fermented boiled fish in the garage.
Yeah.
And they all come round with their beers, and basically one of them's like, you can smell that stinky fish all the way down the street. And the character who's cooking it, it's like his wife will not let him cook it in the house because it's just going to stink it out for the rest of the year. But it's an Icelandic tradition, and they want to uphold it, which is amazing and cool and fair. But yeah, it's probably one of the worst.
I think that scene, the fish cooking scene of like the old dudes being like, oh, the wife's inside, I've got to be in the garage. Do you know what I mean? That and the librarian scene, and many others actually, are quite a good example of stuff that they're like super Icelandic, because like where else is somebody cooking like a super stinky fish in their garage over beers?
Quite.
Or arguing about whale meat again, where else is that happening? But at the same time, they're like really universal and relatable. So like everybody knows that trope of the middle-aged man having a beer with his mate, said, oh, the missus, she's on me, I gotta be out of my shed. Or like the guy, or like I said earlier, you know, the mum, I'm a vegan now, you don't understand me. They're tropes that are really universal, but they have quite like an Icelandic flavour here.
Yeah, it's fermented fish flavour.
Yeah.
But no, that's exactly it, isn't it? It's such a universal. Overall, it's a film that anyone can relate to in many, many ways, but it's so specifically Icelandic.
Yeah, I think that is true, that if anybody watched this film, there would be at least one scene in it where they'd go, yeah, I kind of recognise an aspect of that relationship or that situation or that feeling. Like, it is very broad spanning.
Totally. And I had this thought, and I don't know, it's very Icelandic, and it makes sense. 75-minute film, 56 vignettes, all very much Icelandic but very universal. How do you think it would translate if we did a British version? Do you think we could do it?
Yeah, 100%. I definitely think you could do a British version of this. Obviously, it'd be very different, but I definitely think that would translate. Obviously, not all these intricacies. You'd have to pick new things that were very different.
Yeah, specifically British things.
Yeah, I did actually think about this, that it is quite interesting about how like racially homogenous the country is. Because I was just thinking, you know, I actually was thinking this when I watched this, what would a British version of this look like? and I think it would be so much more multicultural and like ethnically diverse. So it's quite interesting that in a film where you have like, and this isn't a criticism because I think it's a reflection of the country Iceland.
Yeah.
But in that 58 vignettes, you probably see like 2 people that aren't white, maybe 3. Which imagine if that was made in Britain would obviously not be remotely acceptable. So that was just kind of something that I noticed jumped out at me.
No, quite, and yeah, again, it's
what
the
would you
reflection,
include
isn't
in
it?
a British version?
I don't know. You know, we're talking like probably you talk about the old men getting drunk playing Monopoly. I mean, you could definitely just have a translation of that in England. Probably be more like a family, just absolutely beating the hell out of each other, screaming. But also maybe you'd have the builders down the greasy spoon, something like that. That's classic
Hairdressers.
British.
You'd have a hairdresser in there.
Yeah.
I think. Oh, there was a hairdresser.
What was quite interesting about the Icelandic one was it was a young male cutting a young male's hair, and they were doing that classic hairdresser, you know, chat about friends and all the goss. Yeah.
I forgot that there was that hairdresser one.
And I like that one because there's the moment where 2 of the girls they're talking about have the same name, and he's like, no, not Maga, whatever, it's Maga, it's the other one. And it's just that, like, there's a lot of people with the same name, basically.
I think those tiny touches are quite nice that make it feel really real, because like in a normal film you would never have 2 characters with the same name. Do you know what I mean? That kind of banality wouldn't happen, whereas there was quite a lot of incidents like that where it felt very real.
What I found really interesting is like it's such a small country, but there's just everything, every random niche you could think of is sort of almost covered. Like specifically I'm thinking of the bikini bodybuilding contest. Yes. I mean, that's not the first thing that would come to mind when I think about Iceland.
No.
But I love that it's like it's a part of life,
also,
so it's there.
I love that in a population of 300 and whatever thousand people, there's enough female bodybuilders to merit a competition.
Well, yeah, I think it's great. I wonder whether that was all of them.
There are 8 in total, and they compete for the crown. I mean, possibly.
Like every year,
possibly.
Same. Yeah. It's like 8 bodybuilders, and going back to the discussion we had last week about how many police there are in Reykjavik, I found out.
Oh, did you? You did some research.
I did a little bit. Approximately 700 active and reserve police officers.
That sounds quite a lot.
Decent, yeah. But I mean, I don't really know what else to say about that. But I think that's more than we were expecting.
Yeah, because that's. Oh God, I'm not going to try and do some terrible live on air maths.
Let's not.
Yeah.
And talking of population, it's how many people? What percentage of the population are actually in this film?
That's very true.
Because there's a lot of people in or involved with.
That is very true. I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
No, I'm not asking for maths again. Let's not do that.
I'm just looking at the other ones that kind of stood out to me.
Mm-hmm.
And one was the scene at the bus stop where we have 2 people that kind of accidentally start chatting just about how long they've been waiting for the bus. And it turns out that they know each other or knew each other at school, and that one of them was bullied and the other one kind of tries to apologise for it retrospectively, and that to me felt really moving. I don't know.
Very, very moving. I wonder whether that's something that actually happens and whether or not it's a good thing to do that.
Recall the past, yeah.
Yeah, because the girl who was obviously the victim doesn't want to think about it, doesn't really want to recall any of that. And you know, she says thank you for saying that and forgives her, but then she runs away.
Not interested in going down that road, yeah. And again, that's another one though, isn't it, where it leaves so much open to your kind of inference about what happened, and it leaves you to imagine the whole story of what was involved there and the impact it had on her.
it seems like it might have been one major thing, but yeah, I don't know. And I don't really want to think about what it could have been. I mean, school bullies are always, they're never nice, and it's not nice to think back on that. And I wonder whether any of the school bullies at my school would ever, by chance or not, do something like that.
I think possibly,
and I'm not sure they would.
Because I think a lot of people are really cruel as children and then grow up into quite nice people. You know, children are just mean, aren't they? So I think that probably does happen quite a bit.
Oh, well, I'd like to think so. And I wonder whether that would be like the quota of one bully asking for forgiveness for the year. Oh, and also whether or not Christmas was the reason for it as well. Like whether that sort of swelled their heart a little bit and they felt the need to apologise. But I think that's always the thing. My thought was, are you apologising because you're genuinely sorry, or are you apologising because you feel the need to get it off your chest? And that's not made clear in any way, I suppose. No. And it's so internal as well. We don't necessarily get to know anyone's internal lives that much.
What do you...
You can see the outward emotion, I
What
suppose.
were some of your favourite scenes?
Some of my favourites. One of my favourites visually is the mountain rescue team. Yeah. And we spoke about it last week as well. You know, people get lost in the mountains regularly. And you firstly you see three people, and then the shot doesn't move, but you just get this sort of flying V of all the search and rescue workers just coming into frame and filling the landscape, the big white mountainous landscape. And it's one of the more kind of vivid shots that I remember from the film. Absolutely love that. And again, it evokes that kind of, it's Christmas, where are they going? What are they doing? Now, obviously, it looks like they're searching for someone, but who and what and why, we don't know. But it's still a stunning visual. So I like that one. And I also very much liked... Oh, I really liked the kids stealing the booze.
Yeah. I enjoyed that.
Just a very simple scene, like among the festivities of the New Year, which is, as you can see from this film, we spoke about that before, like it's a big deal. And there's a lot of fireworks and a lot of smoke. And they're just sort of under the cover of, I don't know, not even really that hidden, but they go and steal the cold booze from the table outside. And that's something my dad does in winter over Christmas. He puts all the booze out the back in the cold.
What an error.
As far as I'm aware, we've never had any stolen, but those kids just seize the opportunity and fair play to them.
Very relatable. Oh, there was just one that I wanted to mention that we haven't spoken about.
Yeah.
Which was the scene in the funeral parlour where a body is brought in of a boy who's, I don't know, like 8 or 10 or something.
Yeah, it's quite young.
And then we hear the funeral director. It's all very kind of quiet and slow. And then we hear the funeral director take a phone call and say, "Hi, darling. Hello, sunshine. Practice is cancelled, so I'm going to have to pick you up late," or whatever. And it's obviously, you know, his daughter, who, by the way he's speaking, sounds maybe about the same age. And I thought that was just a really nicely observed scene, that like the kind of normality of death, and that life goes on. And yeah, I thought it was well done.
Yeah. You know, he's working, he's got a phone call. That's something we all do every day. It just so happens that, yeah, he's a funeral director, and the casket or the coffin is filled by a young person. And
it's interesting that that's the scene that you choose to show in that situation. And I think it's quite a good statement, like early on in the film, that you could show as, I don't know, like the mother weeping at the funeral or whatever. But we don't get that. What we get is like the actual, just like everyday ticking over of stuff instead. And it's a bit like, this is what this film's going to be.
And it's that, this again, this film literally touches on everything we've observed in the previous films we've talked about this series. But the opening shot, or one of the opening shots of Jar City, of the young girl lying naked on the table, I thought that was really sort of reflected by this scene. Like, there's almost no filter. It's like, we're going to show you it as it is, and even if that's a young child who's died, that's just the way life is. And I'm not sure you would necessarily get that in a British version of this film. Or
it was very matter of fact with, you know, life, death, birth. So you got death, and you got the grandma at the graveside saying, "Oh, we're all gonna die. Just you're gonna die. I'm gonna die. We're all gonna die." And
it's a bit much for a child.
But then you also got, you know, like, obviously it wasn't gratuitous in any way, but you got like a full-on shot of an actual birth that is, I think, is well done, because it's like shows you, it doesn't sugarcoat it, but it's not too much, but very much just like, this is birth, this is death, here's some stuff that happens in between.
Quite, and it's also perfectly placed in the film, because New Year's bells have just gone off. It's like signaling the new year with new life, and it's just, it's a beautifully observed is the word, like we keep saying, scene, and perfectly placed in the film, because you could put these vignettes in sort of kind of any order, but the way it goes from one to the other, whether that's slightly thematic or slightly shot based or what have you, it's been sort of masterfully done. I do love that bird scene. That I watched again this morning. That scene made me cry again. It's just again so matter of fact. We see maybe 10 seconds of the mum breathing, having a tough old time. Apparently that birth took 7 hours.
And we get it in 30 seconds.
We get 2 minutes of it, but the way the baby just comes out, the midwife unhooks the umbilical cord from its neck and just throws it at the mum, and then the dad's just there waiting, and they're just, that's it. They're a complete family now, and it's lovely. Also, I found it weirdly, because that comes at the end, and the first shot is that serene shot of the car entering and disappearing in the car wash. Weird sort of, mirroring.
I didn't have live birth car wash mirroring in my head, but each their own. Whatever your brain wants to do.
But that idea that New Year's happened, and like you said at the start, that we're moving forward now. We've had the celebrations. We're going into the new year with new life, and you get that tiny little scene of the guy changing the sign, the car crash sign, which is really, I've driven past that a few times. I can't remember how many, what the figure was, but he takes down the 15 that have died that year, and then puts up a "no one's died yet" sign. And it's just like so matter of fact and so mundane. This is a kind of yearly job. Obviously, the number changes throughout the year, but it's one of those jobs that has to change. It must be quite nice to say, right, out with the old. This year, nothing, and that's like a positive look to the future.
Quite a nice, hopeful note to end on, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Maybe a nice, hopeful note to end this podcast on.
Just a few pick-up points that I wanted to mention. The music, like I said at the start, it doesn't play a part in the film itself, or the score doesn't. That's just sort of opening and closing, but it's absolutely a beautiful piece of work.
Yeah, lovely way to bookend the whole thing, isn't it? And because when it comes in as well, you're like, okay, I get it. We're back. We're complete now. We're finished. We're done.
It's come full circle, and it's that kind of choral strings that we've seen previous, and is very Icelandic. The whole hymn singing and choral singing is deeply ingrained in Icelandic society. And actually, this music was written by Kjartan Sveinsson, who was in Sigur Rós.
Oh, okay.
And his stuff is just, sublime. Apparently, he's worked with the director Rúnarsson before. They think this was the director's third film. So, there's 2 others of his to take in at some point. But yeah, I love the music. And even within the film, what we do get, like the Christmas songs, again. We've heard a lot of Icelandic Christmas songs. And I think next Christmas I might just have to build a little playlist of Icelandic Christmas songs. Because it takes me straight back. So yeah, love it.
Yeah, very hypnotic, very calming, very uplifting is such a cheesy word, isn't it? But I did feel uplifted, so I'm going to say it. It was
exactly.
Uplifting.
Yes, I think you're right. It's one of the, I mean, they've all been fairly watchable films, but this one specifically, like, for me personally, having, I'm clearly
an Icelandophile.
Yeah. For me personally, as I guess an Icelandophile, as you would say, it felt like a great big warm hug from Reykjavik saying, like, look, remember this? Yeah, come back. And it really, it really feels like you're there. And I loved just being able to watch stuff happen. Like, I never thought I'd be that hypnotized by like people, by the garbage men collecting the bins or things like that, but I don't know, maybe it's because it's a slightly more alien place. Whether or not I would care so much about a British version, I don't know, but it is a very watchable film, and I will happily sit there and let it wash over me time after time. I've seen a lot of people say, like, you should add it to your Christmas watch list, which, I don't see why not.
Yeah. All the facets of Christmas are there.
Yeah, and that feeling of celebration, which is, I guess, kind of the overarching theme. It's like, Christmas is a time for celebration, but let's celebrate Iceland as well in its entirety. Yeah, so that was Echo by Rúnarsson from 2019.
And what have you got in store for me for the final episode next week?
So, final episode, I thought we'd end on a film that completely surprised me in a very good way. We started with a darkly comic tale, a very Icelandic darkly comic tale, and we're going to end in very much the same way with a film called Under the Tree.
Lovely.
Excited?
I am indeed. And I will see you there.
And I hope we'll see you there too for the final film discussion episode in this series. As I mentioned, we're going to discuss Under the Tree by Hafstein Gunnar Sigurðsson from 2017. Strap yourselves in for this one, because it's a wild ride. Once again, this is streaming on Amazon Prime in the UK, as well as Mubi, and I'm also told that it's available to rent on Chili, BFI Player, Curzon and Apple TV. As always, let us know what you thought of the film by getting in touch on Twitter, where we're at Kvikmyndapod, that's KVIKMYNDAPOD, or just chat with us about all things Icelandic. If you can, please subscribe or follow us wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a short but positive review. See you soon. Takk og bless. Thanks and goodbye.